Welcome back to Hardball. Is Karl Rove leaving his job at the White House so he can avoid congressional scrutiny, or is he going to face more now that he's exposed and outside the White House? Will he be forced to testify in his role in the firing of those 8 or 9 U.S. attorneys and the CIA leak investigation, of course, which is ongoing up on the Hill? That's today's Hardball debate. Joe DeGeneres is a former U.S. attorney, a big guy in this town. He served as former independent counsel. He was all over the place here. Big social figure here. And Melanie Sloan is the attorney for Joe and Valerie Wilson. Of course, she's also executive director of CREW, which is Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. You start, Melanie. Why should Karl Rove have to testify? He's out of the White House. He's claiming executive privilege. He's a free man.
He should have to testify because the American people deserve to know the truth about so many scandals that Karl Rove has been involved in, and that includes the U.S. Attorney scandal, the leak of Valerie Plame's identity, and also the political briefings that he was engaged in order to benefit Republicans in the 2006 midterm elections.
Okay. Are those criminal matters? Is this like Watergate, where the president's involved in a criminal conspiracy, where you could say it's like he has to be the same as any other citizen, he has to be susceptible to testifying and being a material witness, or is it just a congressional exploration? No,
there are actual criminal laws that may have been violated here. There are penalties associated with the Hatch Act that may have been violated, and if the White House was orchestrating the firing of U.S. attorneys for the political reason of trying to interfere or obstruct justice, in certain cases, that too could be actual criminal matters.
For the defense, Joe DeGeneres.
Well, of course, he doesn't have to testify. Even though he is leaving the White House, the executive privilege argument will follow him, because what matters is what he did while he was working for the president. So the White House will continue to insist on executive privilege. There will be that invocation, and then Congress will have to decide what it wants to do in all of these areas, whether it wants to proceed to contempt citations against him and others. That, of course, is a drive.
Can they issue a bench warrant and go chase him with it?
Theoretically, Congress can execute its own contempt citations and have a trial in the well of the House. They can arrest people. They can hold them in the little cell that exists in the well of under the Capitol. But they eschewed doing that many, many years ago because it was time-consuming and it was politically very, very bad for them. And so they will have to rely on the judicial process through the U.S. attorney in the district, which raises all sorts of issues about whether or not anything would ever come of that. But I don't even think they're going to get to that point.
Do you think Karl Rove had a role in forcing the resignation of U.S. attorneys, those 8 attorneys we keep talking about? Do you think he played a role in that?
Well, you know, nobody knows who played what role at this point, and I can't imagine that he wasn't consulted, because, as you know, these are very, very important political decisions. Who was appointed U.S. attorney?
Right.
And so I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Karl Rove was involved in those, because the political office is consulted on every nomination, judicial, U.S. attorney.
Well, we know for sure that he was involved in at least one, and that's of the Arkansas U.S. attorney, Bud Cummins, because he wanted him to be replaced with a former staffer to Rove himself. Right. So we know he was involved there.
That is correct. That's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, the president has the right to remove any U.S. attorney for any reason. And so your initial question, which is, have any criminal laws been broken? There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever of that in any of these areas.
And that's one of the
and that's one of the reasons that the Congress is going to have a very, very difficult time in piercing executive privilege.
Give me probable cause, if you will, whatever the right legal term is. Give me a crime that Karl Rove, you believe, committed. Give me a crime he committed.
I would say that he leaked information in the Valerie Plame case.
In a felonious way. He broke a federal law.
Yeah, I think he broke a federal law by giving out Valerie Plame's identity to reporters. I think that he also has been involved in obstructing justice in the U.S. attorney scandal. I think he's trying to hide behind executive privilege so that the American people don't learn the truth about the firings of the U.S. attorneys, including David Iglesias and John McKay, who both were contacted by members of Congress because they weren't doing enough politically to help Republicans in those districts.
All I got to say is I'm glad Melanie's not a federal prosecutor, because she's not playing hardball. She's playing spitball. I mean, this is the goofiest stuff I've ever heard.
Well, what about
there is not one scintilla of evidence that any criminal law has been broken in any of these areas. Congress is going to have to meet that threshold to pierce executive privilege.
Well, why do we have a case involving the President's Assistant for National Security, the Vice President's Chief of Staff, in which the Vice President president refuses to testify, the defendant refuses to testify, so they don't have to give away any information. So they've escaped.
Those are called constitutional rights, Chris,
but they have avoided telling the public what role they played. That's what now they're using executive privilege to deny it, and the vice president often uses this argument, no matter what meeting I have, it's a secret meeting.
You know, Chris,
isn't there an awful lot of secrecy in this administration?
Every president has used executive privilege to shield information and to keep it secret. Jimmy Carter,
right.
Bill Clinton. Has
any other president ever? Well, I'm not going to get in your case. I'm trying to help. You know, it seems to me that the Karl Rove.
By the way, Karl Rove was not charged with a crime in the Valerie Plame matter. So any suggestion that he broke the law, there is no evidence that by talking with reporters he violated any law.
Let me ask you about Karl Rove and the question. Now I've lost my question. Go ahead, Melanie.
Sorry.
No, it seems to me that the Karl Rove is basically claiming that any conversation he has, even without the president in the room, his executive privilege claim is that if I'm talking to anybody in the Justice Department, anybody who works for Alberto Gonzales, anybody there that had to do with the firing of those judges, that's executive privilege. I thought executive privilege meant conversations with the president.
Actually, the Clinton cases in the D.C. Circuit expanded it beyond conversations with the president, much to the dismay, by the way, of many people who were against President Clinton. The D.C. Circuit expanded executive privilege in the Clinton cases, and whether or not it would work its way through to that, ultimately to force testimony, no one knows.
Let me just say that in the Clinton years, 31 different top officials in the White House testified 51 times in front of Congress. This is a far cry from what this administration is doing.
Were they subpoenaed or they voluntarily testified?
They voluntarily testified, which is something we should be seeing Karl Rove do to clear up the truth of the matter. This is a democratic system of government. We have an open government.
I know how you get to testify. Hire him to give a speech somewhere, and you show up and raise your hand because he's got to answer the question.
But Melanie, as I understand it, is representing the Wilsons in a civil suit in which Karl Rove is a defendant. Yeah. Let's get that out on the table.
We put that on the table almost every time she's on here.
But Melanie has all sorts of reasons to want witnesses in her case to talk, and many of us who might represent some of those witnesses, which I don't in any of these cases, would find many reasons we wouldn't want our witnesses to talk. And she understands the system.
Well, that's a different matter. Of course it's unfair, because even if you're putting aside Valerie Plame, there's still the U.S. Attorney matter, the political briefings matter, and the RNC email accounts,
By the way,
of which
you're calling her Valerie Plame. Joe Wilson corrected me the other day, said it's Valerie Wilson. I don't know where he gets that, but anyway, you better call her Valerie Wilson or Joe Wilson's going to be after you.
Well, he did walk out of the White House today. He got almost a knighthood from the president with that big hug.
Karl Rove?
Oh, yeah. Well, he didn't walk out frog march.
Listen, after 6 years of warfare in this town.
Who won this fight?
Which fight?
The fight over whether Karl Rove should have to explain himself.
Oh, well, Karl Rove did win and will continue to win. The law is going to be on his side in this matter, and the president.
Melanie, who won this?
Well, I think the battle's still ongoing, and we'll see. I still hope to see Karl Rove forced to testify in front of Congress.
Well, I know you do. Well, look, thank you for coming on anytime.